Millions of years ago, Shinnok, one of the Elder Gods, turned on his fellow deities and invaded the Earth Realm. Raiden and the Elder Gods stopped Shinnok, locked him up in the Nether Realm. Others followed in Shinnok's footsteps, like Outworld's Emperor Shao Kahn, who was obsessed with conquering Earthrealm. So Raiden convinced the Elder Gods to enact the Mortal Kombat tournament as a way to even the odds, give Earthrealm a chance. For generations, Shao Kahn followed the Elder Gods' rules. The war moved to the arena, where he sent his toughest fighters to challenge Raiden's greatest defenders in Mortal Kombat. 2 years ago, we beat him. But Shao Kahn wasn't ready to lose. He violated the rules of Mortal Kombat and invaded Earthrealm. Most of Earth's defenders, our friends, were killed, turned into evil undead warriors. Despite the odds, we stopped Shao Kahn's invasion. As punishment, the Elder Gods destroyed him. We thought the long nightmare was over, but it turns out that Shinnok had been manipulating events. Shao Kahn's invasion, his death. All part of Shinnok's plan to escape the Netherrealm and resume his war on the Elder Gods.
We are dealing with an extraordinarily sophisticated, very, very ancient civilization. Examining some of the ancient Sumerian and Egyptian texts because, of course, they're full of all of these references to wars of the gods and the technologies by which they were fought. Then that life is possibly going to be of much larger physiology, in other words, giants. Exploded at certain points in history, and he comes up with the dates of about 65 million years ago and then approximately 3.2 million years ago. If we go back and look at some of the ancient Sumerian texts or Vedic texts in the Hindu tradition, those dates also pop out as being dates where a significant catastrophe happened. One of the final things that he proposes, and he kind of leaves it hanging in the air, he doesn't even explore it any further, he just mentions deliberate action, or in other words, a war. that really set me on the path of examining some of the ancient Sumerian and Egyptian texts because, of course, they're full of all of these references to wars of the gods and the technologies by which they were fought.
You can go into any Sumerian exhibit and see what I'm about to tell you. Drawings of rockets that look like Apollo launching into the sky. Etchings and sculptures of men in spacesuits and what looked like oxygen masks. And this artwork was created in the 4th millennium BCE, 4,000 years before Christ walked the earth. Genesis, Noah's Ark, to name a few. Both of these stories existed in Sumer 6,000 years before the Bible was written. Genesis came from the Sumerian epic of creation. Noah's Ark came from the Sumerian deluge. The alien god legend has its basis, its origins in Sumerian history. You can find everything I've described in the museum, right?
Somebody had to have been here in order for these artifacts to exist. One of the most famous examples that I recall them citing is a case of some very strangely machined, almost rectangular metal tubes that were found in France in a geological and archaeological dig that would have dated them to approximately 65 million years ago. Clearly there were people of some sort of intelligence that had access to some technology that allowed them to do these things. So the idea of a cosmic war being fought at those particular time periods begins to take on a little more plausibility. That this now missing planet, interestingly enough, 19th century astronomers nicknamed it Krypton.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. So, you know, that opens up a whole host of other connections.
Oh, yes, oh, yes.
There was a time above, a time before. There were perfect things. Diamond absolutes. Things fall. Things on Earth. And what falls is fallen.
Bruce!
Arrest and the felony charge of making terrorist threats. That carries up to 40 years. And South American traditions of Indian tribes over here indicate that these giants came down, of course, from heaven and
interbred with humanity and sired very large offspring.
Between heaven and earth was a perilous place. Taking a cue from the richest of kings, they acquired a taste for acquiring things. But the one taste that caused them to lose all control
was a taste for the mankind. Blood, bones, and all.
An enemy vows will come a day when giants return and giants stay. To wage a war, and this time win, and eat the last of Eric's kin.
Out so far, this thing seems to be mostly about angels and a second war in heaven.
Ooh, a second angel? Over what?
Us, humans.
One of the texts I cite at great length in the book is the so-called exploits of Ninurta from the Sumerian. This is a very strange text if it's a mythological text, because what it consists of is rather like a very dry bureaucrat's report on the technology that was inventoried by the victors in this ancient war as they went in and took apart the technology of the vanquished party. It's rather like reading one of those American or British intelligence reports as they went inside of Nazi Germany at the end of World War II. You know, and this goes on for pages and pages, Henrik. You know, it's very, very dry reading. But it's interesting because what they're doing is they're taking a technological inventory. And again, this rings very true because the Allies did precisely the same thing at the end of World War II. We wanted to find out what technology the enemy had, why in some areas they were so advanced, you know, what made all of this work. And in some cases we destroyed that technology. In other cases we simply carted it home and continued working on it. This is exactly what happens in the Sumerian text.
I mean, again, there are so many tablets that has been found throughout the years and so forth, but how did you go about, so to speak, kind of, you know, picking the good ones, so to speak, or how, rather, my question is, how much information actually is out there and how much is available?
There is a lot available and a lot that has been translated, but, you know, you ask a very good question, because my impression is, just from the research I did, is that no more than maybe 5 to 10% of it has been translated.
All of our work and understanding of their world is derived from the inscriptions on a large stone artifact we pulled from Hell in the earliest days of the program. We call it the Helix Stone. It is our most closely guarded asset. From it, we learned how to manipulate Hell's energy, bend it to our will, take advantage of their resources.
What was that? That's Hebrew. That's not Hebrew. It's fucking Latin or something like that. I went to Hebrew school for 6 years. That's not Hebrew.
Drown in a river of blood. The end of days is here. You will quiver in the shadow of Kingdom Come. Judgment Day is upon you. The apocalypse is nigh.
The Sumerian texts in particular are full of references to what are called the Tablets of Destinies, and I know some of your listeners that are familiar with the works of Sitchin will recognize that term. These tablets, whatever they were, gave their possessors enormous, extraordinary power. On each occasion of their theft, they're actually stolen, from what I can tell, either 2 or 3 different times in history.
Mm-hmm.
The first time by Tiamat, which occasions a war between her and her allies, and Marduk and his allies. And then there is a second theft by Anzu, or Zu, depending on which version of the text that you read. His name varies slightly.
Mm-hmm.
And that again leads to a war, and it's that second war, in fact, that is fought with Ninurta opposing him, that leads to this inventory of the stones, so to speak, that were part of this technology, whatever it was. They describe manipulation of emotions. They describe manipulation of weather.
It's a thunderstorm.
Mother used to say the giants make the thunder.
They describe the destruction of entire celestial bodies, in other words, planets. So in other words, this is a very sophisticated, very powerful technology.
You call me all friendly, telling me how much you miss me. That's funny.
That's Hebrew. That's not Hebrew. It's fucking Latin or something like that. I went to Hebrew school for 6 years. That's not Hebrew.
Those drowned in a river of blood. The end of days is here. You will quiver in the shadow of kingdom come. Judgment day is upon you. The apocalypse is nigh.
Acres or ziggurats or pyramids are always associated with this technology of mass destruction.
A deeper revelation dawns. Our worlds have met before.
This is not your planet to rule. The fallen shall rise again. This planet will be dark forever.
Call you a coward, Master, but sometimes cowards do suffer.
Decepticons around the world. Launch the pillars.
The Great Pyramid shows definite signs that there were things inside of it that are now missing, that were at some point in the distant past removed. I refer specifically to those very strange slots that exist in the Grand Gallery, and to the niche in the Queen's Chamber and so on, that looks as if they were receptacles for something. We don't know what. And of course, Chris Dunn has hypothesized, and I think plausibly so, that they were some sort of resonator assemblies, at least in the Grand Gallery. So I think if we couple that with this whole idea of the Tablets of Destinies and then the inventory of the Stones of Power and so on that are talked about in the Exploits of Inerta, that we see definite signs that these two technologies were coupled together in some fashion, and that the texts seem to support the idea that something was removed at least from the Great Pyramid, if not from other pyramids or structures in the region.